Hello, everybody. Again, this is our 23rd episode, believe it or not, of ScaleApp Podcasts, and I'm Dan Eisenberg. Those of you who are just joining us, you should know that ScaleApp Podcasts I created. It's a serious hobby of mine because I'm extraordinarily interested in how companies grow. When I say companies, I don't mean necessarily companies that are technology companies or Silicon Valley companies or American companies. We are fortunate to host in ScaleApp Podcasts companies, ventures that are growing, all of whom have passed the 5 million US mark from all over the world. We've had ventures from China, from Greece, from Turkey, Germany, the United States, England. And today I'm really excited to host for the first time a venture from Trinidad and Tobago, which we will call occasionally T&T. And I have here the two co-founders of a company called Giscad. And so just say hello, Desmond and Sudesh, so people can hear your voices.
Hi, everyone. This is Desmond.
Good day, Dan. Thank you for having us.
That was Sudesh right there. And they're the two co-founders. Giscad has been around for a while. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off by just asking both of you, Desmond and Sudesh, to say something about yourselves and don't say anything about Giscad. Just talk about yourselves as people for just a minute.
Sudesh, go ahead.
Putting me on the spot. Dan, I think one of the biggest things about me is I really enjoy trying to find a balance. So I'm a big sports fisherman. I love to go fishing. I'm not very good at it by comparison, but it doesn't discourage me from always trying to get involved in every fishing competition or opportunity that I have. Even though a lot of times I'm way outclassed, it's my passion. So that is something that I'm looking forward to. I'm bringing this up because in about 4 days' time, I'm going to a little fishing tournament in Tobago, which is a beautiful part of Trinidad.
Right. I haven't been yet. I've been to Trinidad a few times. I haven't yet been to Tobago. It's several hours by ferry, as I understand it. And apparently the fishing is great there. I have been fishing off of Trinidad myself. And what's your favorite fish to catch?
The ones that fight, obviously. So like the kingfish, the caride, which is like one of the bigger fishes. They're predators in the waters in Trinidad and Tobago. Really fun fish to catch. So yeah, looking forward to that for sure. If you ever know, it's something that I highly recommend.
Next trip, we'll talk to Walt, who's our partner down in Trinidad and Tobago, and we'll talk to him about arranging something. So Desmond, a little bit about yourself, not related to the company.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Okay. Well, I'm father of 3, grandfather of 4. Been living all my life in Trinidad, studied abroad for many years. And I think, Sudesh raised an excellent point. Living in Trinidad and the Caribbean and the whole balance is a big part of your life. Work doesn't center your life. It's part of your life, but we have a lot of great social activities, great social lives, great family lives. And I think we are blessed to be living and working in the Caribbean.
Well,
it's an amazing part of the world.
And just say a few words, if you will, Desmond, about Trinidad and Tobago, other than there's great fish there and what you just said. But I think a lot of our listeners will never have been to either Trinidad or the smaller Tobago. So just what is it?
Trinidad and Tobago is the last island in the chain of the Caribbean islands, so literally 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. And that makes it a very different Caribbean island. It's not your typical sea sand Caribbean tourism island. It's heavily oil and gas based and petrochemical based industries. And that's where the business of Trinidad and Tobago has been for the last 100 years. So it gives also a different flavor to Trinidad and Tobago. Tobago is the sister island of Trinidad, which is a much smaller island. Just about 50,000 people live on it, but it's an absolutely beautiful island. I consider it the last unspoilt island of the Caribbean. Sudesh has a house over there, and we go over there and use it frequently. Beautiful place to visit. Please do. If you're into ecotourism, Trinidad is unsurpassed for birding and leatherback turtle watching and things like that. You won't find anything better anywhere. And our carnival is the best in the world. Sorry, any Brazilians out there, but it is the best in the world.
If you get the impression, listeners, that Trinis or Trinidadians are proud, you would be forgiven for getting that impression from what Desmond just said. But I've been there, as I said, quite a few times, not enough yet, but it is quite a special place. It's about 1.5 million, 1.4 people altogether. So of the 50,000 who live in Tobago, all the rest are living primarily in Trinidad, focused primarily in the one city, Port of Spain, and with some distribution around there. And as I say, oil and gas does permeate, but there's a lot of business outside of, secondary, tertiary businesses that don't look at all like oil and gas now. And that brings us to Giscad. So tell us in just a short sort of thumbnail sketch, either one of you, what is Giscad?
Well, I Sudesh, if you allow me,
Please.
the creation story of Giscad is interesting. Sudesh and I were never entrepreneurs. We never thought we would ever do anything, business-wise. Both of us worked for a company, technology company, and that technology company 22 years ago decided to downsize and refocus on its core. And Sudesh and I were dealing with the geospatial side of the business, geographic information systems, which is my and Sudesh's specialty, and developing that business for them throughout the Caribbean. And while they decided to downsize, we both were out of jobs, and Sudesh said, well, let's start our own business. And that's how Giscad was formed. And it's not a very creative name. It's GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and Computer-Aided Design. And we just stuck them together, and there came Giscad. But it was born out of necessity. It was born out of, this is the need to get moving fast and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And Sudesh gives the story of sitting in my patio at home with my cat jumping on his laptop, and that's how we started.
But Giscad has grown quite a lot in those 22 years. Could you describe the business today?
Sure. I mean, now our headquarters is in Trinidad and Tobago, but we're also incorporated and have offices in Jamaica, Barbados, and Guyana. And we're also incorporated in Panama for a LATAM expansion. Our clients are distributed around every single country and territory in the Caribbean, so close to 30 countries or territories throughout the Caribbean. Every tier one client in Trinidad and in most of the companies throughout the Caribbean region are our clients.
What are you selling? What do you sell them?
Right, so a combination. Sudesh, you take over.
Yeah, sure. I mean, initially we started off as a service business. I mean, we were strictly, as Desmond said, into GIS type projects, and that is where we really got our start. But a big part of that also revolved around the fact that we were heavily involved in our Autodesk, which is the CAD side of the business. And that was handed over to us, negotiated over to us by the company that we worked for before. So it came with it tons of existing customers. So we sold in essence a lot of software, but we had the support mechanism that we needed to provide. And we were basically the only game in town providing that service and support.
So you're the rep, local rep of Autodesk to start with.
Absolutely. Now there were some huge companies that were in that market as well. Massive, massive players. And Desmond and myself and one other was essentially a company of three. And we were butting heads against organizations that had 100+ dedicated to that same business line. But we competed, and we competed well, and we grew the market to the point where we became the only entity managing those business lines, that business line in the Caribbean region.
How did you unseat the larger competitors?
That's a great question, Dan. I think a big part of it was service. We were just very nimble. We were very agile initially, so we could have gotten into companies very quickly and troubleshoot and did the troubleshooting they needed to get their solutions up and running. We were also seen as the experts in the field, because we could have gone in a lot of times and really, no nonsense, have the conversations that we needed to with customers saying, you don't need 25 seats. You really do need 10 seats. And we would manage it in such a way that you will get the same output as if you, and one of the bigger companies were trying to sell you 25 seats. And that developed a level of, relationship and trust that just grew. And it's organic, because the other big companies said, these are the guys you need to deal with. They advise you well. And they're always there to provide that back-end service. I think that was a big part of the initial break-in that allowed us to capture market share.
So it sounds like part of what you're saying is honesty is the best policy.
Well, most definitely. I think especially in the Caribbean, where it's built around relationships, and that's almost like the selling point. A lot of times you'll sit in a meeting and there will be no discussion for the first hour or two, just getting to know each other around the table. It's very relationship-oriented business dealings, and that is crucial.
Interesting.
I think we got that formula right from day one.
Okay, and so that raises a few other questions. But today, how much of your business is Autodesk or the CAD side of it, and how else do you make money?
All right. Well,
Desmond.
Maybe I can take over there too. About 2 years into our business, we started basic GPS tracking because one of our good friends had a fleet and he didn't know where his vehicles were most of the time. So this was back in the very early days of GPS tracking, when the technology was very rudimentary. Data plans weren't in place on phones, so nothing was live. You would collect the data in the vehicle, bring it back, download it, stick it in your computer, and figure out where the vehicle had been. So it was really rudimentary at that stage. But 20 years later, we are the largest fleet management company. We don't say GPS tracking because it is really not GPS tracking anymore. Tracking and location is just a benefit, a byproduct of the whole solution. Fleet management, helping companies understand where their fleets are, how their fleets are operating, the efficiencies of their fleets, the efficiencies of their mobile workforce, managing their vehicle maintenance, scheduling, they're managing their clients' deliveries, and making sure we're helping them understand where they're missing clients.
So it's interesting, just as a reflection, it sounds like you got a lot of growth from using that core of we're helping you with GPS and reframing it to we're helping you manage your fleet and providing a lot more benefits in addition to GPS. So it wasn't a technology anymore. It was a solution to our problems. Is it fair to say that?
Absolutely. The technology is just the underlying platform. What comes on top of that, and how you build a business case to companies. Because we only do B2B. We don't do retail fleet management at all. Only B2B. And with that, we really have tried to assist primarily a lot of distribution fleets, but many service fleets also, in getting the maximum efficiencies and values out of their fleets.
So one of so that raises, again, a few questions. But before I get to those, just snapshot today. How much of that is your business today? And how much of that is T&T? And how much of that is outside of T&T?
Right. Let me try and think through that. Fleet management represents about just under half of our revenue.
So what's the other half?
The other half is a mix of the Autodesk business plus a few other lines that we represent, plus consulting businesses. We still have some core, and our core was consulting, and we provide professional services around that, and Sudesh and his team lead that. So there's a mix of software distribution, fleet management services, consulting. So that's our mix, and I would say fleet management is just under half. The Autodesk side is just under half, and then the other remainder is between consulting and a few other.
And I don't know how much you want to say because it's a private company about the revenues, but it's a condition of being on our ScaleApp podcast that you've broken $5 million US. So I think everyone out there can assume that. How many people are in the company altogether?
Right now at this stage, just under 50. I think we're just about 48 across the region.
Let's say 50. So let's say 50. And now let's talk about the export business. How do you manage that service intensive business in other countries and bring that same level of relationships and let's call it honesty or trust? How do you bring that outside of Trinidad and Tobago? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Sure. So we've been embarked on that a lot of programs where we try to replicate the model that we have in Trinidad. So there's a lot of standardization and onboarding that we do with all our staff regionally. So we constantly retraining, we're constantly having touch bases. There's a whole network and cadre of solutions that we implement internally to ensure that every staff member is competent, qualified, capable, and comfortable with the solutions that we offer. And then there's a whole back-end chain of support that leads back to Trinidad as almost a central repository of knowledge. So that model works really, really well, not just from the customer success perspective, but from the sales perspective as well, both post and pre-sales. Now, a really interesting point that you had made, Dan, coming off of something that Desmond said, was because of our business lines, they're so synergetic that when we have a fleet management solution that we offer into a customer, we could also now tie that into, say, geographic information systems and a consultancy solution. Because now we could say, hey, guys, let's help you not just from a fleet management perspective, but let's grow your market share with your customer revenue generating business, because we could, map out where your customers are. We could create better routes for you, more efficient routes using geographic information systems. So one business line literally feeds the other and creates that stickiness with the customers that they go, okay, these guys could help us in so many different touch points. And that is what we've been able to do regionally. I think that is a big part of why we're successful.
And I want to just come back to this notion of trust. It's my word, but I think it's part of your value that you're selling. How do you build that trust and train your team to build that trust outside of T&T?
I think a big part of it is sometimes just telling the customer no, and we have that in our DNA.
Hey, more
sometimes, yeah. So we have differentiated ourselves from others in the market because there are many out there that a customer will say, I need X, Y, and Z, and they'll go, yes, 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 before they even hear the final statement. And then they're hard-pressed now to deliver. And that basically leaves a terrible taste in the mindset of the customer. Because they're going, oh, this. And in a lot of cases, FM was sidelined in a lot of the minds of customers in the region because they go, that doesn't work, because they were burnt by people making promises or people providing solutions that were making promises that they couldn't deliver. So when we come around and say, look, we can deliver this is what it can do. You have this problem. I'm in love with your problem. Don't fall in love with my solution. I'm in love with your problem. Let me figure out how to solve that. And we mightn't be the prettiest solution initially, but we'll work on getting it to the point where it's comfortable and we can get it sorted. And that, in the mind of the customer, builds a level of not just trust, but confidence. Okay, these guys could actually deliver what they're saying they can. And if they can't, they're not going to tell us that they can and lead us down a road where we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with nothing to show.
So does this part of what you do is training of your people? Is it selection of the right kinds of people? Is it corporate culture? And if you can avoid saying all of the above, I'd appreciate it. But the answer may be all of the above and more. So how do you inculcate that kind of service mentality throughout a distributed company?
So we do have, sorry, Desmond, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say too, one of the keys that we realized too is that we could not sit in Trinidad and expand a regional business from just sitting in Trinidad. We had to become local. And I mean, we started reaching out from Trinidad 15 years ago. And we did that by, constant trips around the region, which, by the way, is very expensive to do because the travel in the Caribbean is not cheap. So it was very expensive. So we realized we needed to become local. We need to have local presence, local people in local markets, which is where we started first in Guyana, then in Jamaica, then in Barbados. Plus we have other So we have our own teams and our own staff in those 3 countries. Plus we have sub-resellers, franchisees, essentially, if you want to call them, in other of the smaller markets, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, Bermuda, etc. And we found that was a way also that you need to be there. The local people need to be speaking to the local clients. Even though Trinidad is looked at many times within the English Caribbean as being a leader for technology services, it's still necessary to have a local presence.
Okay. And what have been some of the, so far it sounds great, right? We haven't talked about the challenges, and I'm sure it hasn't been a perfectly smooth ride. What have been some of the challenges that you've faced particularly in expanding your business, and how have you overcome those challenges?
All right, let me take that one again, Sudesh. About 8 years into the business, I mean, Sudesh and I were growing the business, and we had a great team of people with us. It was small, it was nimble, it was fast. We were growing at 20% a year. But we had 2 scientists, and 2 scientists running a business is a terrible idea. So one of us, me, had to become a bit more admin, finance oriented, and I'm terrible with accounting, and I've had to learn it by force. So 8 years into the business, we nearly bankrupted ourselves by growing at 20% a year but having no cash. And we realized, we got to pick this up. We got to do better. This was the point where 8 years in, I have to put my house up for guarantee to get a loan to keep the business running, and you don't want to run a business like that. So we nearly crashed and burned, even though we were growing like crazy.
Or partly because you were growing like crazy.
Part of it because you were growing like crazy and spending like crazy. So cash management was terrible. So we realized we needed to tighten that up, and we made a serious commitment to fixing our governance structures at that time, getting proper accounting systems, proper board structure with external directors on that would help us and keep us in line. And it's something that we've really found has been a major game changer. I mean, we have more external directors on our board than internal directors. It basically keeps us from doing nonsense. Is my way of saying it. Bright people who have lots of experience. So cash management, even though you're growing, it was a big challenge.
So you might not have had this governance structure, not as soon anyway, if things had gone smoothly. But part of it was because building a board, especially with external board members, a real board, is a little bit unusual in the business culture, as I've experienced it in Trinidad and Tobago. And so in that respect, I think you're a little bit of an outlier. Sudesh, I think you were trying to say something.
No, I was just in agreement with what Desmond was saying. I think another key component of what the board brought was a wealth of networks that we really piggybacked off of to get into areas that we traditionally could not have gotten into, and also to guide certain decisions and move things along where they had stumbled, or we had just said, we've invested enough time and effort there and it doesn't seem to be going in the direction we needed to. So that really gave us shots in the arm in terms of growing some of the business lines that were doing well, but not well enough.
Well, let's talk about the future. Do you see, and I'll phrase it a little more extremely just to get the conversation going. Do you see yourselves being a $100 million US company someday? If yes, how? If not, why not?
It's a good question. 100 million seems very far off. All right. I mean, it's over 10 times where we are now. Can it be done? I don't doubt it can be. That will be left to some of the bright people that we have in the company now who will be succeeding us. I don't think Sudesh and I will be the ones doing it at that point. And we have some amazing people that have built through the company, have been with us. Most of our staff have been with us close to 10 years or more.
So you said taking over more of an ownership role possibly in the future?
We're looking at that also. And that's something that we're really trying to examine how we can do that, and how we can do that in a way that keeps the company growing. Because there's all kind of challenges in that too, but definitely in senior management and executive roles.
Now, it's also a bit unusual in T&T and in general, relatively small markets. I don't like the word emerging markets, but markets such as T&T, which has a lot of advanced features to it. But it's sort of typical to have family businesses and to see succession being within the family. Is that not the case for both of you? You see this more as a non-quote unquote family business, or are there family members involved as well?
It's not particularly a family business. I mean, Sudesh and I are majority shareholders. We do have a couple other shareholders that form a minority share. Yeah, my son is involved in the business, but he had to apply for the position like everybody else and go through an interview process. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the one leading the business. He would want to at some point in time, but that's not the intention. That's not the plan outright. It's all merit at that point, and everybody needs to work their way through. And there's people before him that will definitely be leading the company. There's no question. So it's a yes. There's many family business in the Caribbean. We are definitely going to be growing, and the succession planning within the organization is something that we've been very serious about. We've already gotten some proposals from several companies to do some serious succession planning with us, and it is on our radar for this financial year.
Interesting.
Put that in place.
Interesting. So you're taking a very intentional perspective in structuring and thinking about your business. I think that's the word I would probably use, intentional. After your 8-year crisis, I guess 12 or 13 years ago. Let's talk a little bit about ScaleratorT&T, and I want to just tell the listeners what that means. We run a program called Scalerator, which is part of a broader scale-up methodology that I've created and we've created with a team of experts over the years. And we've been working in Trinidad and Tobago. We created something called ScaleApp T&T in 2019, which consists primarily of a 5-month, call it training program, very intensive, called ScaleratorT&T. And that's how I got to know Giscad. And of course, Desmond and Sudesh and some other team members as well, because this is for teams of people, not just individual founders. So say a little bit about why you joined ScaleratorT&T, because it's a big time commitment, and what you got out of it. Sudesh?
Sure. So I'll be honest, initially Desmond is one who brought Scalerator to us. And he said, "What do you think about this?" I think he was basically really excited about the prospect of it. And I was reluctantly saying, we have so much on our plate. How do we commit mid-management, senior management to this very, very structured program, but very time-demanding program? I was like, I don't know how it's going to be done. I don't know if we can. And I'm one of those that can safely say that when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This was probably one of the greatest growth opportunities and experiences for our entire mid and senior staff.
Why?
I think they all got I think everybody got something that they took away. To say that any one person took the same thing away, that could never be the case. I think everybody took something different away in terms of how, again, Desmond explained it. I'm an engineer. So how I would approach a customer is from an engineering perspective. And we always had the mentality before, we'll build it, they'll love it, and they'll buy it. And that is clearly not the case, right? So it totally changed our focus on how we would approach customers, not just from the perspective of just diving in and having conversations, but building that persona, that customer persona, modeling the customer, and then also modeling the customer journey. The discussions that we needed to have to take it along the way basically was changed entirely from what we were doing before. And the success rate that we saw out of that just encouraged us more to dive deeper into this Scalerator, to see what other gems we could pull out of the Scalerator program that we could, put inside of our policies and our procedures going forward. Not just in Trinidad, but we took some of those policies, standardized them, and then earmarked them for rollout regionally. Because a lot of those people never saw Scalerator. but we were able to share those ideas, and they were like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing."
Desmond, from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Scalerator focused on the 3 Cs, right? Cash, customer, capacity. And that was really useful. I think it brings strategic planning down to a very structured, focused, process-oriented system. And that was useful. And to me, I've always said the biggest value we got out of Scalerator was actually bringing our entire senior and mid-management team together. I think we had 12 people there in the program, and we definitely abused your system there and brought everybody we could into it. And it was fantastic having that conversation between our team members, and also dealing and hearing from the other participants. I think there were about 10 to 15 companies at the time. So it's a lot of interchange across companies. That was extremely useful too, to hear the good, bad, and ugly from other companies, and also think about our processes with other companies and get their feedback. That was extremely useful. That and again, being led by you and your excellent team. So that was a big takeaway, I think, and it really gelled everybody towards a forward progression.
So I promise everyone that this is going to be a relatively short, 30 to 35 minutes. So we're going to end very quickly, very soon. But I don't want to end before I ask you the following question. And I'll start with you, Sudesh, and then Desmond. And the question is as follows. If you were to run into your younger self, let's say 20 to 25-year-old self, who was wanting to start a business, for whatever reason, what would you tell them based on your experience? And again, Sudesh, I'll start with you. What would you tell your 25-year-old self?
Okay. I think the first thing is you don't have all the answers. You may be brilliant at what you do, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll be good at building a business. Be open to suggestions and be open to advice, especially from those that have walked that path before successfully. It's good to take risks. My younger self was super risk adverse, and we would have lost so many opportunities if I had stayed in that mindset. So to my younger self, take risks.
And be open.
Be open to advice.
Great.
And don't think you have all the answers yourself.
How about you, Desmond?
Yeah, that's excellent stuff, Sudesh. Dan, I know when we started our fleet management business 20 years ago approximately, we made a projection. I look back at that projection now and I laugh, because the projection was so optimistic. Our business should have been 5 times what it is now if we had taken that projection. So you have to be prepared for disappointment. You have to be prepared to not get everything that you're planning. And selling technology, particularly in our region, and I think, of course, in many lesser developed countries, is a hard sell a lot of the time. And it takes a lot of patience, a lot of understanding of clients. So be prepared to learn, be prepared for the setbacks. Don't take it personally. All right, you're not a Superman. And it's just learn and keep on moving forward. You just have to keep on moving forward.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Well, we're going to end in again 1 more minute, because I usually don't do this, but I have to make a few comments of my own, because you said a few things earlier on that I want to highlight for the listeners. And one is that you started Giscad out of necessity. And in our field, the field of entrepreneurship, especially theory and research, there's this notion, which I've never accepted, that there are 2 kinds of entrepreneurship: necessity and opportunity entrepreneurship. And I've always thought that these are completely conflated. Opportunity leads to necessity leads to opportunity. And I think what you said about the origin story of Giscad is a good example of how necessity, meaning I need to, I don't have a job and I need to build a job for myself, how that can lead to opportunity and create opportunities. And I think that's really important. We've seen this already in a couple of previous podcasts. For example, Yodek and Epignosis, both of which were founded in Greece in the crisis, and the founders needed a job, they needed income, and these have grown into world leaders. So this notion of that there are two kinds of entrepreneurship, I think, is, to be quite frank, I'll say it politely, it's incorrect. I'll say it impolitely, it's kind of bullshit. The other thing I want to highlight here is the importance of trust. Now, trust is an interesting word, and I, as a business person, the only two times I've been cheated were by people who said, trust me. But having said that, I also have told my students for many years that trust is a rare commodity, but if you can generate it and find it, it's the most efficient way of doing business, is with people that you trust and getting customers to trust you. You have to build it. It's not common. It doesn't happen by itself, but it's something you have to plan for and do intentionally. So I really like the Giscad story of building your business based on trust with customers. So thank you for bringing that up. And again, Desmond and Sudesh, both the co-founders 22 years ago of Giscad, based in Trinidad and Tobago, but doing business in several countries throughout the Eastern Caribbean primarily. I want to thank you both very much for sharing, in a short format, sharing your journey and your ideas with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. So much. So we're very happy to be involved, and great work. Keep it going.
So again,
You're most welcome.
thank you both. So again, this is ScaleApp Podcasts. It's a serious hobby for me. I would appreciate it if you've gotten this far and you've listened, that you share it, you repost it. If it's on LinkedIn, you share it, you like it. This helps us get the word out. I think it's really important for society. It's important for people. It's important for all of us to build a culture of growth around the world, that what we're looking for is growth, and growth generates a lot of benefits for lots of different people. It generates benefits for our societies. So let's really try and learn what we can from all these wonderful examples. How do we make companies grow? So again, signing off, Dan Eisenberg here, ScaleApp Podcasts. Look forward to hearing you or allowing you to hear us in the next episode.